All right, it is that time again. If you are interested in promoting your brand, your music, or even yourself here on Viral Hip Hop News, email me, Sam Ent, at dlsmediainc1 at gmail.com. Let's go.
From what it appears to be. What's your overall thoughts about what's going on right now?
At first, I did not think he was going to, end his campaign for reelection. It just seemed it's such a he was really, really out there campaigning, and I'm absolutely not a Biden fan at all. But I could not believe it. But with James Clyburn here in South Carolina, the man against whom I'm running, who's the incumbent, when he said that he would support an open primary, then I said, okay, they're talking about something behind the scenes. Now, what I find interesting is that he stepped aside, but he did it via a letter, and he has yet to do a press conference. At some point, you would have thought a speech of that magnitude, he would have delivered that via a press conference, or at least from the Oval Office in the White House. Like, he has not been seen at all. So that to me is quite interesting. As far as Kamala Harris goes, I mean, she may be the nominee. At first, Nancy Pelosi did not endorse her, but she did as of a few minutes ago. Obama has not yet come out to endorse her. Chuck Schumer has not yet come out to endorse her. Those three, even though Obama does not currently hold an elected position, but those three are kind of the ones who dictate how the direction of the party. And it's going to have a convention. I'm curious to see if they're going to have an open primary or not, or they're just going to, have Kamala be their person that they're going to put up to run against Trump. And if they do, she has been polling lower than Biden. But, polls are just a snapshot of the responses of the people you ask. I'm not a Kamala supporter either. Let me be very clear. I'm just speaking objectively that she has been polling lower than Biden, but we shall see.
It's funny because if you look at perception in the black community, black Twitter, as they call it, black Instagram, you would think she's the next best thing since Jesus Christ. Like, she's going to beat Trump. She raised all this money. Charlemagne the God, D.L. Hughley, all these people are going nuts right now. All these memes all over the place. I know everybody has to see it. So you mean to tell me that she is lower than Biden right now? Actually,
they just released a poll, and yes, she's polling lower than Biden was polling against Trump. Biden and Trump would sometimes switch positions where Trump will be in the lead and Biden will be in the lead. As of this poll, it's just one that is doing a hypothetical if Kamala was to be the nominee. Yes, she's polling lower. And what you're seeing is a lot of symbolism. First of all, I don't get it. Kamala is not a freedman, meaning she's not a Black American who's a descendant of those who were enslaved and emancipated in America. Some people are even arguing if she's Black. Now, I don't argue that, but some people do. But we have this symbolism where you have some Black women who are excited about seeing another Black woman who may be able to ascend to the office of the presidency. I guess we have not learned our lesson from Obama. We need more than symbolism. Now, I'm willing to give Kamala a chance. I want to hear some policies. Let's talk policy, okay? But the reason I'm a little suspicious of Kamala, because one big issue for me, and this has been since day one when I launched my campaign, and it's always been an issue for me, is mass immigration. Our country is literally being invaded at the border. And whereas we see our people struggle, whether you are a freeman, a Black American, or you are the descendant of a Black immigrant, you was born in America, we see our people struggle day in and day out. I have not seen a homeless illegal immigrant at all. I've seen them being put up in hotels, being given debit cards to purchase food, getting free clothing, healthcare, transportation, job training for well-paying jobs that we were told we need to go to school to get special training, certifications, and degrees, and yet they are bypassing that for illegal immigrants, giving them job training and having well-paying jobs waiting for them. Kamala, even though she was not the president, this has happened underneath her administration. Underneath her administration, they have sent billions of dollars to some cities that are struggling to accommodate these illegal immigrants. That is something that really turns me off. I am for stopping mass immigration, illegal, but also out of control legal immigration. I want to hear what Kamala is going to say about that. Of course, we got to have that reparations conversation. So I'm willing to hear from Kamala and see what she has to say. I don't think we should close the door off if she becomes the nominee. But I'm not going to get excited because she has some melanin in her skin. This is a woman whose mother was Indian and whose father was of mixed race, Jamaican heritage, or is, because he's still alive. So some people are really falling for symbolism. I will never do that. Even if she was a freedman, that's still not enough to get my vote or my support.
We in the black community have been falling for symbolism when it comes to these elections since we were alive. It's always been about symbolism. It's never really been about policy. We've never gotten to the nuts and bolts. And now with the advancement of the media and social media, it seems like a lot of our entertainers, a lot of our media personalities, they really try to force that and nail that in of the perception, and us kind of looking at the perception as opposed to really sticking to the policy. Why do you think that is? We talk about often a lot of these in particular black media incumbents and black media entertainers getting paid off by the Democratic Party. Just call it for what we see it. What do you think of the reasoning? Because I seen Ebro this morning. He dropped on Twitter, you got a woman that may be Indian and black. I consider her as black, and against this white man who wants strictly white policies. They try to split it. They try to make it so much about race when it comes to these elections and play on the minds of black folk. Why do you think that is?
One, we have been so discriminated against systemically in this country. Those of us who are freemen, whose ancestors have been here from day one to now, we have been so locked out of positions that would not exist without us. Abraham Lincoln said, without the black freedmen, the Union would have fallen. And yet, even after slavery ended, we went through 100 years of horror. The GI Bill that paid for 15 million white veterans to enter the middle class, made them homeowners, helped them become automobile owners, gave them pensions, gave them six-figure salaries because it helped them get into the professions. My great-grandfather is a World War II veteran. He's still alive. He just turned 100. He was locked out of the GI Bill. Homestead Act. That's the Homestead Act of 1862. There were several Homestead Acts that gave land mainly to white men, but eventually white women too. The Homestead Act of 1862 gave away $10 trillion worth of land from 1862 to 1976. We were locked out of that. They did a Southern Homestead Act that was supposed to go to us. We were locked out of that. The New Deal, Labor Union Act, Social Security Act. Of course, Jim Crow saw us locked out of opportunities for education, for professions. Of course, people always focus on how we were denied our right to vote in large part in the South. We were also denied the right to run for office. So now we see some black faces who are ascending to these positions that were once locked off from us, and we get a sense of pride. We live vicariously through them. But we have to stop being so emotional when it comes to politics. Politics is not something that should be done based off of emotion. It should be done based off of logic and what is best for my demographic. I am not mad. If there's a white American man in middle America, the Midwest, and he wants to know how are you going to benefit me, white Americans who are in the Midwest that probably live in the steel mill areas, what are you going to do for us, or the former coal mining areas? They have a right to ask that. That's smart. You look out for your own self-interest. What you don't do is try to harm other Americans who have a right to look out for their own self-interest too. You can look out for your own self-interest without harming others. We need to get like that. We need to start saying, okay, wait a minute. What are you going to do specifically for my people? We have to stop being so emotional.
Well said.
So is it fair to say that, because when you hear Trump talking, he talks often about shutting the borders down and how all these illegal criminal immigrants come over here, and then you see it, quote unquote, black jobs, they're taking black jobs. So it just stands more so with Trump in the aspect of immigration.
Oh, yes. I'm further to the right than Trump. Oh, not only, no, we don't need to just close the border down. We need to do mass deportation. Now, people often say, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? I'm not buying that. This is a country that kept tens of millions of black Americans enslaved first, but then when Jim Crow came along, they kept tens of millions of us underneath the thumb of Jim Crow. Even though the North did not really have Jim Crow and the West did not have Jim Crow, my great-grandmother who moved to New York City in the late 1920s, early 1930s, I can't remember exactly, she told me that there were the same type of discrimination in New York City and Philadelphia that she experienced in Beaufort, South Carolina, and in Savannah, Georgia. Okay, so if this country was able to systemically oppress us, it is not oppressing someone by letting them know you are here illegally, you gotta go. You don't necessarily have to even send ICE agents after them. What you have to do is go after the corporations that are hiring them, because that's really the cost of this matter. Corporations want cheap labor. They don't want to pay Americans a fair wage, especially Black Americans, American freedmen. And you got politicians who see that we are waking up. This whole reparations thing is really taking off. Just 4 or 5 years ago, this would have been a topic people would have laughed you out the room if you mentioned. Now it's something that's being mentioned, and politicians, even Trump, had to address it. We're demanding specific policies for our status, the freedmen. We want all the Black community to be helped, but we are also saying that not all Black people are the same, and Black Americans who are descendants of the emancipated, we have a special status. You could look up the Freedmen's Bureau. You can look at the Freedmen's Bank that did in the 1800s. We are the freedmen. We're still here. What are you going to do for us? Because we are still owed the wealth that was stolen from us in this nation, that was denied to us. Now that that's happening, you got the Democrats who want to import a new voter base. So in places like California, Maryland, and D.C., they're giving people in the country illegally the right to vote. Think about it, y'all. We have the least amount of wealth in this nation.
Yes, sir.
Our land, we lost 90% of our land, 15 million acres. Really, it was stolen. Our wealth is going backwards. There's been a few bumps every now and then under Trump, even under Biden, but for the most part, it's still going backwards. Our home ownership rates are around the same as it was during Jim Crow. It gets a little higher, but it's still where it was during Jim Crow, when it was legal to discriminate against us. And we have the right to vote right now. If we're not getting anything for our vote right now, what's going to happen when they try to give tens of millions of illegal immigrants who send money back to their nations, who have no loyalty to this nation? Definitely they don't care about us. A lot of them come here hating us. Do you think they're going to vote for our interests? Do you think they're going to vote to help us? They're going to vote and mobilize against us. So me wanting to protect the borders is something that any proud American should want, but it's looking out and protecting our interests. We already have enough bigotry we deal with. A study in Duke University in North Carolina and South Carolina, 63% of Mexican Americans, well, they were illegal, Mexicans who were illegally in the country, said that Black Americans were troublemakers, criminals, were not good neighbors, did not work hard. 63% of the ones that were interviewed. We already have enough bigotry that we deal with. We don't need to add to the numbers of people against whom we have to fight.
You spoke on you agreeing with Trump's policy as it pertained to immigration. What are your overall thoughts about Donald Trump in general, and what was your thoughts about the assassination attempt last week?
The assassination attempt, I'm gonna go backward. That was kind of weird. I mean, I saw the videos. Like, okay, supposedly this guy brought a ladder to climb on top of the building. Like, who does that? And people were saying to the police, "Hey, someone's on top of the building. That's not normal. Hey, they're getting in position." And the police were like, "Oh, yeah, that's kind of weird." That was kind of weird. So I'm not going to say, look, if anyone has a right to be a conspiracy theorist in this nation, it's us. Because what has this nation not done to us? From the crack epidemic, and before that, the heroin epidemic, to the chain gangs, the debtors prison, mass incarceration. We literally had a person who worked for Richard Nixon saying that they knew Black Americans were not importing crack in America, were not abusing crack in large numbers, but they had to associate us with the heroin and crack addiction so they can lock us up and target us. So if anyone should be unapologetic about thinking that things are not what they seem, it should be us. If it was just incompetence, the incompetence was extremely glaring. They're having a hearing right now as we speak about what took place. But I'm not going to rule out that there was something nefarious behind the scenes that took place. The ball was just dropped And it was just a little too glaring for me to believe that there was not something more taking place. And as far as how I feel about Trump, the only thing where I align with Trump right now is the mass immigration stance, because that's going to hurt us. I don't understand why some of us, because we've been hurt so bad in this country, we've been through so much terror, we want to sympathize with other groups. I sympathize with other people who are suffering. Let me be very clear. But if you can risk life and limb to get here, you can risk life and limb to fix up your own nation. That's number one. Number two, a lot of these people that come here hate us. I was watching a video in Chicago. It was this migrant, that's what we're calling them now, right? At a town hearing in Chicago. Our people were talking about how the city of Chicago is spending billions of dollars housing illegal immigrants, and Black Americans are freezing on the streets. It was this Mexican guy, could barely speak English, saying how we were lazy and no more money for you. In California, the largest civil lawsuit in Californian history are Black Americans, freedmen, descendants of the emancipated, suing their Hispanic colleagues who terrorized them on the job. Look at affirmative action. Affirmative action was not helping the descendants of the emancipated for whom it was meant for. It was supposed to be for the descendants of people who were enslaved and emancipated and went through government sanction, because we're talking about what the government did, not what white people did, but the government. Let's keep the focus on the government for what the government did. Affirmative action was supposed to make up for all the years the government denied us access to things that we should have had. Who has mobilized to bring it down? A lot of Asian Americans. You saw a lot of them saying affirmative action is hurting them. Now that affirmative action has fallen, now they're still saying they're not getting into the schools where they want to have access. But they were blaming us. Look at historically, when the Irish and Italians came here, the European, Germans and Anglo-Saxons did not like the Irish and Italians. What did a lot of the Irish and Italians do? They launched some of the worst race riots against us in American history. The draft riots in New York City. That was a lot of Irish immigrants attacking innocent Black Americans. Look at some of the riots in Chicago. A lot of Irish and Italian immigrants. There has not been any group of immigrants that have come to this nation and have largely sided with us. They always mobilize against us. So I am looking out for us. I'm not saying that there are not immigrants who are for us, or people who are the children of immigrants who are for us. Yes, there are. But I'm saying by and large, people who come here illegally, it's not just because they are wrong to come here illegally and other people are paying money to do it the right way. It's also that a lot of times they come in with open hostility towards us, and they get resources that we don't get. That's not their fault. That's the government fault. But we have to be self-interested. Outside of that, Trump ain't really offering nothing. I'll explain why I don't hate him as much as I used to. Right. Because when Ice Cube asks who wants to come up with policies for Black Americans, and he reached out to the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign, it was the Trump campaign that right away responded to him and came up with the Platinum Plan. Now, the Platinum Plan does not go far enough at all, but that's where my hatred towards Trump started to subside.